ClancyPasta presents The Life and Death of Rusty the Firehouse Dog, written by Man and Lysette and narrated by Clancy. Everyone was sad when Rusty the Firehouse Dog passed away in 1955. He was a pillar of the community, an icon, a true hero. They buried him in the firehouse lawn and erected a beautiful bronze statue at the head of his grave so he could continue to watch over the community he loved. That's how I started my essay on Pillars of the Community. I'd intended to backtrack and tell the story of Rusty's life through the testimonies of those he saved, but as my interviews progressed, I came to realize I needed to change topics. Instead, I submitted a report on Mrs. Ippy's charity bake sale. She had raised $100 for the sick kids' hospital. As much as Rusty's story needed to be told, there's a good reason I didn't submit it. I don't think my professor would have believed me. See, among the heartwarming anecdotes about Rusty's life were stories of his death. I don't mean how he died, I mean taking place after his death. My friend read my original report on Rusty and suggested I post it here. I'm sure you'll understand why I changed horses midstream. No one knew how old Rusty was or where he came from. He was just some mutt firefighters found out back, shaking from the cold. They took him in for the night, hoping his family would come for him, but no one ever did. Rusty got his name from his matted ginger coat, which was discovered after washing away a bucket of mud covering his fur. Unlike the Dalmatians you normally see accompanying firefighters, Rusty wasn't bred for the job, wasn't taught to be some poised, heroic mascot. He grew into it. He'd follow the crew and sneak onto the fire truck as it whirred out of the station. Eventually, he started pulling people out of burning houses. He was the epitome of a good boy. When asked about her experiences with Rusty, Camilla Langley had this to say. "I hadn't even realized my house was on fire. I was woken up by my mother and father screaming my name. It was dark and I couldn't breathe. I turned on my bedside lamp, but it was still so dark. That's when I felt a tug on my ankle. I reached down and touched a furry head urging me out of bed. Rusty guided me out of the house right into my parents' arms. All he wanted in return were a few belly rubs." This was one of many tales of Rusty's heroism leading up to his death in 1955. After enjoying 7 years on the force, Rusty's life came to a tragic end when he was struck by a speeding car. People mourned, the statue was erected, life went on. And Rusty came back. According to my research, the first incident was in 1957, 2 years after Rusty's death. Retired firefighter Thomas Wilkins sat down with me and shared his story. It was a bad one. The fire, I mean. It started in the basement. The ground wasn't stable. I could feel the heat coming up through the hardwood floor. If I stepped too hard, my feet would sink a little. The structure was weakening. I would have left, but I was trying to get to the back of the house because I thought I heard a scream on my way out. The heat was unreal. The captain called for us to evacuate, but god damn it, I knew in my gut someone was still alive in there. Suddenly, the floor collapsed, and I fell into the fiery basement. I was knocked unconscious, and when I came to, I was being dragged up the stairs by my pant leg. I was disoriented, had a concussion. I looked up to see who'd come to my rescue, but there was nothing there. I had no idea who or what was dragging me up. I blacked out again. I woke up in the backyard next to a little girl with Sergeant Parker standing over me and telling me I must have crawled out. But our heads were facing the house. Who the hell crawls backwards? No one saw Rusty, not even me, but I knew it was him who saved us. Another similar incident involved William Will Schaefer. Remember the drought of '58? Oh wait, no, of course not. You're way too young for that. What am I talking about? You weren't even born yet. I don't even think your parents were born yet. You should ask your grandparents about it. Anyways, where was I? Oh yeah, the drought. Believe it or not, this whole neighborhood was countryside back then. There was a brook behind my house with a little row of pine trees going all the way around the property. Not all of this concrete baloney we have today. I just want to pause to clarify something for you guys. I live in a city that went through rapid development in the 50s and 60s. Mr. Schaefer's childhood home was just at the edge of the Firehouse's service area, right before the farmlands. Today, it's a suburb with a bunch of duplexes. The air was hot, the earth was cracking, and the brook was almost dry. I was alone, my sister had come down with polio and my parents had taken her to town. This was before the vaccine, you know. Goddamn tragedy. She was in an iron lung for weeks. Anyways, I was old enough to be on my own, went to bed late and slept like a log, until I heard growling coming from my closet. Yeah, I was old enough to take care of myself, but I was still young enough to be scared of monsters. I hid under my covers and tried to be quiet, but the growling got louder and louder. I was scared. Didn't know what to do. I remembered my dad's shotgun by his nightstand, so I gathered the courage to get up. I headed to my parents' room, and that's when I saw a wall of orange outside their window. The pines were on fire, and the blaze was jumping quickly towards the house like a goddamn wave. I froze. I heard a growly bark behind me that snapped me out of it. I turned to leave, and I could have sworn for a split second I saw old Rusty's silhouette watching me from the darkness, his beady little eyes glowing like embers. As the flames drew closer to the house, their light stretched into the hallway, and I realized I was alone. I heard incessant barking at the front door, so I followed the sound leading me to safety. My house was razed to the ground before the firemen even arrived. Rusty saved my goddamn hide. Rusty the Firehouse dog, a hero in life and in death, I thought. Until I spoke to Maria Lopez. She welcomed me into her home and fed me milk and cookies. Even though the fire had been over 60 years ago, the scars looked just as fresh now as if they'd been made yesterday. They covered the right side of her face like the grooves of the Grand Canyon, but they seemed to disappear when I looked into her gray eyes. She spoke of the incident in a bizarrely serene tone. In 1962, I was about your age. I was getting ready for a date with a strapping young lad down the street. I was curling my hair and doing my makeup in the master bathroom. I put the curling iron where I always put it, on a porcelain plate on the counter next to me, so as to not burn the countertop. I leaned forward to put a bit of makeup on, and then I caught a strange odor, like wet dog. I didn't look, I just kept priming and preening for my date. The smell of dog went away eventually, but in its place there was a hint of something burning. Thinking I'd accidentally put the curling iron on the counter rather than on the plate, I quickly tried to grab it, but it wasn't there. Not on the plate, not on the counter, not even on the floor. And then I heard a low growl in the bedroom. The curling iron was igniting the bed. I can't believe how fast the flames spread. I barely had time to scream for my parents before the whole room was ablaze. They came running, but they couldn't reach me. I had no way out. The bathroom didn't have a window, and the bedroom floor had become engulfed in flames. Mom told me to get in the tub, and so I did, peeking over the edge from time to time to find the fire closer every time. I can still feel the heat searing into my skin. Through the crackling of flames, I remember hearing that unnatural growl, like a dog trying to scare away an intruder. Maria spent 2 months in the burn unit following the ordeal. She was convinced something had taken the curling iron and put it on the bed. Her family wasn't so sure. They believed she'd done it as a cry for attention, but that the fire had gotten out of control. She'd suffer enough though, so they didn't punish her. She could never explain the smell of wet dog, nor what was growling at her through the fire. Then there was the case of Tyler and Candace Miller, the latter being a young mother in 1965, almost exactly 10 years after Rusty's death. I was making supper, and Tyler was laughing alone in his room. Good boy, he screamed happily. It was so strange. I know it's normal for children to create imaginary friends, but there's still something unsettling about hearing your child talk to thin air. At dinner, I asked him who he'd been talking to, and he answered, Rusty. Now, I'd taken him to Rusty's 10-year memorial at the fire station a few days prior and showed him the statue. He'd learned all about how Rusty used to ride on the fire truck and how he saved people from burning buildings. I assumed the stories had inspired this new imaginary friend. His night light malfunctioned that evening, or so the fire marshal's report explained. Some sort of short circuit caused a spark. The curtains caught fire. I heard Tyler scream and ran out of bed. His room was full of smoke, so I scooped him up and headed to the door. I tripped on something soft. I couldn't tell you what, maybe a stuffed bear. Then I heard this odd hiss, like a gas leak in an old pipe, and the flames started to spread, almost like they were chasing us. I pushed us along with my heels, Tyler still tight in my arms. But just as I reached the threshold, I felt something clamping down on my ankle. It yanked me towards the fire. Out of instinct, my arm shot up and grabbed the door frame while the other held Tyler. I clawed at that frame so hard. They found a few of my nails embedded in it. I flailed my leg to try and break free, and I hit something hard. I heard a whine, and the grip loosened enough for me to get away. I scudded out of the room and then let go of Tyler just for a second, just so I could push myself up, and that's when I saw him being dragged back in. The door shut in my face. I heard the fire hissing and Tyler screaming for help. I tried the door handle, but it was scalding hot. I could barely hold on. I tried as hard as I could to open it, but she showed her burnt palms. I wrapped my shirt around my hands and tried again, but the door wouldn't open. I screamed and cried and threw myself against it to break it, but it was useless. Nothing worked. I fought until I passed out from smoke inhalation. The firefighters came in time to save me. They found Tyler's skeleton curled up in what was left of his bed. There are a lot of accounts just like Candace's. Reports of growling, barking, eyes in the darkness, a silhouette in the flames, and people getting dragged into danger. And then, the stories shift drastically from being told by lone survivors to being told by the firefighters on duty. The more time passed after Rusty's death, the higher the death toll. Lieutenant LaCroix told me about his most horrific call. We were responding to a brand new apartment building with 15 units. I thank God every day that only 3 families had moved in when it happened. God, it was horrific. I'm not sure you're old enough to hear this, kid. Right, it's for school. Well, okay. So, the entire first floor was burning. Wasn't safe to go in through the front door, but since the 3 families were on the higher floors, we brought in the ladders and tried to get to them from the windows. I remember this one woman. She was holding her baby out the window and screaming, "I'm throwing him to you, I'm throwing him to you." But no one was there to catch it. It was chaos. It looked like the apocalypse, I'm telling you. The fire stretched out of the building and made the sky look aflame. There was smoke and fire everywhere. I've never in my entire career seen anything like it. It spread like wildfire on crack. It would jump from one unit to the next, lighting each like someone going room to room flicking on all the switches. People were crying, screaming. It was like hell on earth. This one Mexican couple on the 5th floor, the husband kept repeating, shit, what was it again? Pero del Inferno? No, Infierno. Yeah, that was it. Pero del Infierno. Still not sure what that means. We set the ladder against his window, and just as O'Connor started to climb, the guy was jerked back violently, and the wife screamed bloody murder. The fire skipped to her unit and spit out her window like a volcano. There was nothing we could do. He started to shake as he shared the story, and then refused to finish. I spoke to a few more firefighters, each with similar stories to tell. No one wanted to say Rusty was behind the fires because that would have been ludicrous. But one of them did admit they frequently used to, and someone else confirmed they still do, find sooty paw prints heading out of burning buildings. I'm sure you understand now why I changed the topic of my essay. Rusty was supposed to be a pillar of the community. He saved people in life, he saved people in death. And then something changed. I want to leave you with a final chilling fact. Rusty's old firehouse is the highest performing fire station in the entire city. That might sound like a good thing because high scores are awesome, right? But here's the thing. In this case, high performing means it puts out the most fires, because the area has the most fires to put out. If you overlay a map of incidents in the city with an old map of firehouse districts from back in the 50s, there's a notable pattern of fires, specifically happening within Rusty's old service perimeter. It's like a hotbed of activity dating back decades, and getting increasingly worse. The city blames poor construction and older buildings on the higher rates of incidents. Me? I think Rusty can't stray far from home. I want to give a huge thanks to last month's $5 and up patrons. Jeffrey B., Viva Bavaria 1516, Melted Dre, Jeffrey W. Jr., Isaiah A., Laura H., Devil's Advocate, King Baby Trashmouth, Lamar C., Cooper S., Divided by Zero, Zero, Kennis S., Snowboy, and all the other $5 and up and $2 patrons on screen as well. All of your support makes these narrations possible, and I appreciate it a ton. If you'd like to join these lovely ghouls, I'd appreciate it if you check out my Patreon page. For just $1 a month, you'll get an exclusive narration that will never, ever be uploaded to my channel. Usually, one a bit too extreme for YouTube. So that's at least one extra video every month for just $1, if not more. For $2 a month, you'll get thanked in the end scroll of every video, and for just $5 a month, I'll shout you out at the end of multiple videos a month personally. You also get exclusive Discord roles for those perks as well. If you'd like to chat with me for a bit, you can join me on a monthly live stream for just $10 a month and get a signed merch sticker for $25 a month. And if you're in the market for some horrifying shirts and hoodies, you can head on over to my Teespring store in the description as well. And don't forget to follow me on Twitter at @2ndClancy. I want to thank you all for watching, and I will see you all next time. Have a good night, everybody. Cheers.